All right, we're going to move on. So our next question. We understand that physicians have a responsibility to both alleviate suffering and to do no harm. How does aid and die fit this balance? And Dr. Edmonds, do you want to start?
Well, I think that's a lot of the ambivalence that you sense from some of us up here on the panel, right? How do we, with Brittany Linder, how do we acknowledge her individuality and some of her perhaps tendencies that fell into that list that I read before, and alleviate her suffering and balance that with our professional responsibilities to do no harm. And a lot of that comes down to exactly how do each of us up here define the word harm. We can do a tremendous amount of harm to people and their families in the modern medical industrial complex. I see phenomenal harm in patient PTSD and complicated bereavement in the ICUs at UCSD every single day. So there's, at least in my world, there are things worse than a quick death in the night with a drug. But at the same time, I'm not so sure that that's a good enough excuse. And I think that that's where a lot of my ambivalence comes from in this area. And it's so easy to talk about this in sort of population levels, generalities. It's very easy for me to come down and say, well, no, I would never do that. But I think Dr. Steinberg's point is extremely important that when you're in the room, when you're in the exam room with that person with a compelling story and a compelling rationale and a compelling level of suffering, that's a very different situation. And I really applauded Governor Brown for being that personal and that open in his decision-making around this as well, especially as a former Chesapeake. So,
in a practicing Catholic.
Yeah.
When we're talking about suffering, I think it's important to remember that what we were shown earlier, that about 25% of the people that have applied for EAS in Oregon actually were concerned about physical suffering. That was not the major thing. It was mostly a question of existential suffering. And that's something that we have to address in a very, sort of 360-degree perspective. We can't just kind of say, well, yeah, we wouldn't want you to be, worrying about, losing autonomy. Here, go ahead and stuff yourself. It's a very facile answer, and even if one believes in physician-assisted death, it wouldn't really be the right answer to just write this prescription, give them a pill. People have to be helped a little bit to understand, where's this thinking coming from? What are my fears? Helping them to, find out what their worries are on a specific level. The person in front of you that's worried about losing autonomy or losing dignity, find out what their concerns really are, because those concerns need to be supported, whether or not you're writing a prescription for something, and those concerns need to be addressed, and we have to be thinking about the suffering of fellow human beings. That's part of our job as doctors. And this is a different kind of suffering. This isn't just what you can take care of with pain medicines. And even if ultimately physician-assisted suicide were part of the answer, it's not the answer. They have to be helped to go through a process to understand what's realistic and what's not realistic in their worries, to know what other things are out there to help them to deal with family issues. I mean, there's a lot of times there's no requirement that the family has to be brought into these discussions. And I think that we saw that maybe 90% of the family, the 90% of the patients told their families what their desires were. But we all are part of a network of people around us, and that, although maybe less so if you're the kind of person that avails yourself of this, but still there are people that will be hurt by any death. And it's good to at least sit down, if the patient is in front of you, to sit down and at least discuss with them, well, who else is going to care about you? Who else is involved, and so forth, and get them to sort of think about that, because this is all part of the process, and we can't just make this go away with a prescription. It's not that simple, even if
not pest control. You sound like a palliative care physician. You sure you're that was brilliant. I love that.
Well, I'm Hal with palliative care.
So I want to give a shout out to Dr. Larry Schneiderman. I learned my ethics from him back when I was doing my residency at UCSD in family medicine in the 80s. Yes, I know I don't look old enough to have done my residency. But and what I learned was, our job in medicine is to prolong life and alleviate suffering, but also that sometimes we cannot do both. That's not exactly what it says up there. And we talked a little bit before about the principle of double effect, and sometimes things will hasten death, but that's not what they're meant to do. Whereas if you give a prescription for a lethal dose of barbiturates, well, that's a totally different story. I think life is precious, and when I'm dealing with these situations where there's family conflict, or you got to err on the side of life if you're not sure, right? Because once you're finished, you're finished. Once your heart stops, you stop. I think life is precious, so that's something hopefully that we all feel. And I think that the whole thing about devaluing somebody's life because they're disabled or because they're functionally dependent or demented, we do not want to go there.
Well, you see, I wasn't really a good teacher. This idea that there's nothing worse than death is what is not true to a lot of people. I did randomized control trials with my colleagues on the advanced directives, how people felt about them, the outcomes, and I was struck by people were not afraid to die, they were afraid to die bad. Most people do not want to be a burden and exhaust their bank account. Now, if you ask something, you should make people feel they're a burden. You're a burden if you're costing your family's life savings and all you're getting is another few months in the ICU. People are altruistic at the end of their life, and that I think is not a terrible way to look at their life. I think it is our job description to do when we hear people say life is precious and patient autonomy, it's their life, it's how they look back in their life that we're trying to cope with. And if in medicine we can do no more that they would like, it's not a question of their demanding something. It's not like the folks who demand to be kept alive, in spite of the fact that they'll never get out of the ICU. They're saying, look, I've had enough. Can you please let me die peacefully, painlessly, and cheaply? Because I've had a good life, and now I want a good death. And I do think that's part of our job description. And I've had patients who weren't well-educated white males, but who were patients who were suffering from diseases that they had felt had brought them to the end of their life. And all I could do was stick a feeding tube in, or continue the IVs, or keep a ventilator going. And those are easy, because you stop the ventilator, you give lots of morphine. You don't put the feeding tube in, you give lots of either narcotics or sedatives. Those are easy. It's the ones, and this is one of the problems I have with this problem. If you're a patient dying after a bout of dementia, you're out of luck. This law does not help you. If you can't take